Welcome to Back on the Stack, a cEDH channel. We are super excited to announce that Back on the Stack is now on Patreon. Please check us out to get exclusive perks. And for everyone who's been asking to get their hands on one of our custom playmats, subscribers to our Grand Slam tier will receive one for absolutely free. Check us out today. Now, let's get right into it and see what decks are being piloted tonight.
Hey everybody, it's Eli, and tonight I'm piloting Roxai. This has been my favorite deck for a while now, and I'm very excited to bring it back on the channel. This is a Turbo Grixis list that seeks to utilize Rograk to make lots of mana fast and power out a quick ad nauseam and win with the Breach or Thassa's Oracle line. For game 1, I mold deep. It gives me a turn 1 One Ring and hopefully allows me to gain enough recursive draw to outgrind my opponents.
Tonight I'm piloting Minsc Boo, Timeless Heroes. The deck is built to be a fast turbo gruel list that tries to win via dockside loops or with a Twin Flame combo. This was an easy keep with the potential to put a turn 2 or turn 3 win on the stack by having Cloudstone in play, a tutor for dockside, and a 1-drop creature.
Howdy, my name is Levi and today I'm playing the partner pair of Rograk and Thrasios. This deck aims to make infinite mana, sink it into Thrasios, and draw your deck. This opening hand, I have the ability to play a turn 1 Rograk, Thrasios, and have interaction up with Lightning Bolt and Chain of Vapor.
Hey guys, I'm Memo. I'm a German cEDH tournament player and coach. I'm mostly known for Najila, but today I will play a different deck, Stella Lee Wild Card. This is a really sweet combo deck. I built a more aggressive style, which tries to deploy an early Stella into a win. Yeah, going forth feels rough, but without the dockside, I'm confident that my turn 1 dockside probably leads to a turn 1 Rhystic Study, which is always something I'm interested in keeping. An early Rhystic Study is game winning, usually that's why I kept this hand. And yeah, let's see if it gets us there.
With introductions out of the way, Eli will kick us off. He draws and plays Misty Rainforest for turn. He pays a life, sacks it, and fetches up Underground Sea to the battlefield. He casts his commander, Rograk, son of Roga. He casts Culling the Weak, sacrificing Roger as an additional cost. It resolves and he adds 4 black to his mana pool. He uses it all to cast the One Ring. It ETBs and he gains protection from everything. He taps the One Ring and draws a card. With his aggressive mulligans paying off, Eli passes the turn. J-Rock draws and plays a basic mountain for turn. He casts Mana Crypt. He casts Cloudstone Curio. He passes the turn. Levi draws and plays Stomping Ground for turn, shocking it in. He casts Mana Crypt. He casts his own Rograk. He casts Relic of Legends. He casts his other commander, Thrasios, Triton Hero. He passes the turn. Memo draws and plays Bloodstained Mire for turn. He casts Lotus Petal. He pays a life, sacks the Bloodstained Mire, and fetches up Volcanic Island to the battlefield. He casts Dockside Extortionist. It ETBs and he creates 5 treasure tokens. He casts Rhystic Study. With everyone having an explosive turn 1, Memo passes the turn. In his upkeep, Eli loses a life from the One Ring. He draws and immediately taps the One Ring, drawing 2 additional cards. He plays Undercity Sewers for turn. It ETBs and he surveils, putting Mystical Tutor into his graveyard. He passes the turn. In his upkeep, J-Rock wins his Crypt roll. He draws and plays Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth for turn. He casts his commander, Minsc Boo, Timeless Heroes. Rhystic triggers and Memo draws. Minsc ETBs and J-Rock creates a 1/1 Boo token. He activates Minsc's +1 ability, putting 3 +1/+1 counters on Boo. He casts Mox Diamond. Rhystic triggers and Memo draws. Mox Diamond ETBs and J-Rock discards Beseju, who endures. He decides to leave Boo up as a blocker and passes the turn. In his upkeep, Levi loses his Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and plays Scalding Tarn for turn. He pays a life, sacks it, and fetches up Volcanic Island to the battlefield. He casts Fabricate. Rhystic triggers and Memo draws. Fabricate resolves and Levi tutors Phyrexian Metamorph to hand. He pays 2 life to help cast the Metamorph. Rhystic triggers and Memo draws. Metamorph ETBs and Levi has it become a copy of Dockside. Dockside ETBs and Levi creates 7 treasure tokens. He casts Chain of Vapor, targeting his own Phyrexian Metamorph. Rhystic triggers and he pays. Metamorph is returned to his hand and he continues the chain by sacrificing a land and bouncing Mana Crypt to hand. He ends the chain there. He recasts the Metamorph. Rhystic triggers and he pays. Metamorph then ETBs as another copy of Dockside and Levi creates 7 more treasure tokens. He recasts Mana Crypt. Rhystic triggers and he pays. Levi casts Trophy Mage. Rhystic triggers and Memo draws. Trophy Mage ETBs and Levi tutors Cloudstone Curio to hand. This is where the table reminds him that Cloudstone cannot go infinite with Phyrexian Metamorph, as it is also an artifact. The table, however, applauds his attempt, and a heartbroken Levi passes the turn. Memo draws and plays Minamo School at Water's Edge for turn. He casts Imposter Mech. In response, Levi activates Thrasios. He puts Ancient Tomb into play tapped. Still in response, Levi casts Lightning Bolt, targeting his own Metamorph. Rhystic triggers and Levi pays. In response, Memo casts Flusterstorm, with all copies targeting Lightning Bolt. It resolves and Imposter Mech ETBs. Memo has it become a copy of Phyrexian Metamorph, coming in as a copy of Dockside. It ETBs and Memo creates 7 treasure tokens. He casts Merchant Scroll. It resolves and he tutors Cerulean Wisp to hand. He casts his commander, Stella Lee Wild Card. He casts Arcane Signet. Memo passes the turn. In his upkeep, Eli loses 2 life from the One Ring. He draws and immediately taps the One Ring, drawing 3 additional cards. He plays Otawara Soaring City for turn. He casts Arcane Signet. Rhystic triggers and Memo draws. Eli casts Mox Opal. Rhystic triggers and Memo draws. Eli passes the turn. In his upkeep, J-Rock wins his Crypt roll. He draws and casts Sylvan Tutor. Rhystic triggers and Memo draws. He pulls a Swan Song off the top and immediately casts it. Sylvan Tutor is countered, and J-Rock creates a 2/2 bird token. J-Rock casts Pick Your Poison, choosing the mode where each opponent sacrifices an enchantment. Rhystic triggers and Memo draws. Then Memo sacrifices Rhystic Study. J-Rock moves to combat and swings Boo at Eli. He declares no blocks, but before the damage step, J-Rock casts Groundswell, targeting Boo, giving him an additional +2/+2 until the end of turn. Eli then takes 6 hamster damage. In his second main phase, J-Rock activates Minsc's -2 ability, sacrificing Boo. He declares that he will target Stella with the 6 damage, and in response to the target, Eli flashes in Orcish Bowmasters. It ETBs and he has it do 1 damage to Levi's Phyrexian Metamorph. Then he amasses an Orc army. J-Rock then draws 6 cards. Bowmaster triggers 6 times. Eli has it do 3 damage to Thrasios, 1 more to Phyrexian Metamorph, and 2 at Memo's Dockside. J-Rock plays a basic forest for turn. He casts Tinderwall. He sacks Tinderwall, adding 2 red to his mana pool. He taps his Crypt, adding 2 colorless to his pool, and he then casts his own Dockside Extortionist. With Cloudstone already on the battlefield, Levi is forced to cast Pact of Negation. It resolves and Dockside is countered. An absolutely heartbroken J-Rock then passes the turn. In his upkeep, Levi loses his Crypt roll. He pays for his Pact of Negation trigger and draws for turn. He plays City of Brass. He taps out to play his last card in hand, Cloudstone Curio. Levi passes. Memo draws and casts Mox Opal. He casts Mystic Remora. In response, Eli casts Vampiric Tutor. He tutors a card to the top of his library and loses 2 life. Then Fish resolves. Memo plays Training Center for turn. He casts Shatter Skull Smashing, where X equals 1, targeting Orcish Bowmasters. It resolves, killing Bowmasters. Memo then passes the turn. In his upkeep, Eli loses 3 life from the One Ring. He draws and immediately casts his own Dockside Extortionist. It ETBs and he creates 10 treasure tokens. He taps the One Ring and draws 4 cards. He recasts Roger. He casts Jeska's Will, targeting Memo and choosing both modes. Fish triggers and Memo draws. Jeska's Will resolves and Eli adds 6 red to his mana pool and exiles the top 3 cards of his library, which are Morphic Pool, Command Tower, and Mana Vault. He plays the Command Tower for turn. He casts Yawgmoth's Will. Fish triggers and Memo draws. Eli casts Vampiric Tutor. Fish triggers and Memo draws. Eli tutors a card to the top of his library and loses 2 life. He recasts Jeska's Will from his graveyard, targeting Memo and choosing both modes. Fish triggers and Memo draws. Eli adds an additional 9 red mana to his pool and exiles the top 3, which are Marsh Flats, Demonic Tutor, and Thassa's Oracle. He casts Thassa's Oracle. With her ETB on the stack, he casts Tainted Pact. Fish triggers, and he pays. In response, Memo casts Cerulean Wisps to draw a card. However, in response to that, Eli pays 2 life to cast Mental Misstep. Fish triggers, and he pays again. Then, Pact resolves. Eli exiles his entire library and Thassa's ETB goes back on the stack. With his devotion to blue being greater than the cards left in his library, Eli wins the game. As it turned out, Memo was quite a joker, and he had us laughing several times. So we decided to keep the fun going. We re-randomized seed order, shuffled back up, and tried again. For game 2, I had to mold a 4, which really hurt, but I decided to stop here since I had a turn 2 dockside if the table had a lot of rocks in play. But ultimately, I just wasn't going to toss a dockside back into the deck to mold to 3.
For game 2, I think it's obvious why I kept this hand. It gives me a turn 1 Rhystic Study, as well as a turn 1 Ragavan. I can't ask for anything better in a Rogside turn 1 hand.
Howdy, Levi again, and this time around, I'm hoping to get this Sylvan Library out turn 1. Let's hope I don't get Mindbreak trapped.
In this game, I kept an early dockside going 4th. I felt like, although I don't have a super good payoff, dockside is pretty good. I have an early Ragavan as well. Copy Artifact might be good enough to copy a ring. Worst case scenario, I just go dockside into Stella and hope to find a good card with either Ragavan or with my natural draw step.
With opening hands decided, J-Rock will kick us off. He draws and plays Arid Mesa for turn. He pays a life, sacks it, fetches up Taiga to the battlefield. He passes the turn. Eli draws and plays Command Tower for turn. He casts Mana Crypt. He casts Rhystic Study. The table groans and it resolves. Eli casts his commander, Rograk. He exiles Simian Spirit Guide from his hand, adding 1 red mana to his pool. He casts Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. He passes the turn. Levi draws and plays Command Tower for turn. He casts his own Rograk. Rhystic triggers and Eli draws. He casts Mox Amber. Rhystic triggers and Eli draws. Levi casts Sylvan Library. Rhystic triggers and Eli draws again. Levi passes the turn. Memo draws and casts Mana Crypt. Rhystic triggers and Eli draws. Memo casts Mox Diamond. Rhystic triggers and he pays. Mox Diamond ETBs and he discards a basic island. He then casts his own Ragavan. Rhystic triggers and he pays. Memo passes the turn. J-Rock draws and plays Reflecting Pool for turn. He casts Dockside Extortionist. Rhystic triggers and Eli draws. Dockside ETBs and he creates 6 treasure tokens. He casts his commander, Minsc Boo. Rhystic triggers and he pays for it. It ETBs and he creates a 1/1 Boo token. He activates Minsc +1 ability and puts 3 +1/+1 counters on Boo. J-Rock passes the turn. In his upkeep, Eli wins his Crypt roll. He draws and plays Marsh Flats for turn. He moves to combat and swings Ragavan at Levi. He takes 2 damage. Ragavan triggers and Eli creates a treasure token. Levi then exiles the top card of his library, which is a mystical tutor. Eli pays a life, sacks Marsh Flats, and fetches up Underground Sea to the battlefield. He then casts Calling the Weak, sacrificing Ragavan as an additional cost. It resolves and Eli adds 4 black mana to his pool. The table now has a discussion here and ultimately decides that Eli likely is going for the win, but has counter magic in hand that depends on his commander being on the battlefield. Levi and J-Rock both announce that they have no interaction. Memo says that he has some, but that it's not very good. Eli then casts Underworld Breach. So, in response, Memo casts Pact of Negation. The table is a little shocked as he does not have the mana to pay for it. However, Memo states that he is sure we are dead here regardless, and he assumes that Eli will counter this and hopefully cast a wheel, replenishing his hand and hopefully giving him an out. However, Eli is just as shocked as he does not have counter magic in hand. Pact resolves, countering Underworld Breach. Eli then casts Grim Tutor. It resolves and he tutors a card to hand and loses 3 life. He then casts Imperial Seal. It resolves and he tutors a card to the top of his library and loses 2 more life. Eli then passes the turn. In his draw step, Sylvan Library triggers. Levi draws 3 cards and decides to keep them all, losing 8 life. He plays Steam Vents for turn, shocking it in. He casts Fell Warstone. Rhystic triggers, and he pays. Levi passes. In his upkeep, Memo tries to convince the table that he can flash in Dockside to help pay for the Pact. However, reality sets in and he loses to his Pact trigger. The turn moves to J-Rock. J-Rock draws and moves directly to combat. He swings Boo at Eli. Eli takes 4 hamster damage. In his second main phase, J-Rock activates Minsc's Neg2 ability, sacrificing Boo and doing 4 damage to Eli's face. He then draws 4 cards. J-Rock casts Gamble. Rhystic triggers and Eli draws. J-Rock tutors a card to hand and then randomly discards Groundswell. He plays Reliquary Tower for turn. He casts Mox Amber. Rhystic triggers and Eli draws. Knowing Eli just double tutored last turn, J-Rock knows that he has to go for it now. He casts Final Fortune. Rhystic triggers and he pays. He then moves to his second turn. In his upkeep, J-Rock creates a Boo token. He draws and immediately activates Minsc's Neg2 ability, sacrificing Boo. He does 1 damage to Eli's Rograk and draws 1 card. He plays Command Tower for turn. He then explains to the table that he is 1 mana short for the win. He needed to draw a non-artifact spell that he could pitch to Chrome Mox in order to cast Temur Sabertooth, activate it, cast Rite of Flame, and start looping Dockside. Unfortunately, J-Rock concedes at sorcery speed, and the turn goes to Eli. Eli draws and plays Training Center for turn. He casts Orcish Bowmaster. It ETBs and he targets 1 damage at Levi's Rograk. In response, Levi casts Deflecting Swat, changing the 1 damage to Orcish Bowmaster. Rhystic triggers and he pays. Bowmaster is destroyed. Eli then casts Wheel of Fortune. They each draw a fresh 7. Eli casts Crow Mox. It ETBs and he imprints Time Twister. He recasts his commander Rograk and passes the turn. In his draw step, Levi's Sylvan Library triggers. He draws 3 cards. He decides to keep them all, losing 8 life. He plays Stomping Ground for turn, shocking it in. He casts the One Ring. Rhystic triggers and Eli draws. One Ring ETBs and Levi gains protection from everything. He then passes the turn. In his upkeep, Eli loses his Crypt Roll. He draws and plays Otawara Soaring City for turn. He casts Mox Amber. He casts Lion's Eye Diamond. He casts Windfall. It resolves and they all draw another fresh 7. Eli casts Soul Ring. He casts Defense Grid. In response, Levi taps the One Ring to draw a card. Defense Grid resolves. Eli casts Mox Diamond. It resolves and he discards Volcanic Island. He casts Wishclaw Talisman. He casts Demonic Consultation, naming Razzle Dazzler. He holds priority and sacrifices LED, discarding his hand and adding 3 blue to his pool. He uses 1 of the blue to activate Wishclaw. He tutors a card to hand, Demonic Consultation then resolves and he exiles his entire library. He uses the 2 floating blue to cast Thassa's Oracle. With his devotion to blue being greater than the number of cards in his library, Eli wins the game. The group is very thankful that Memo was able to carve out a time to jam some games with us online, despite the enormous time difference with him being in Germany. It was a ton of fun. In Game 1, everyone agreed that it felt like anyone could win at any moment with the insane amount of Dockside ETBs. In Game 2, Eli's Rhystic Study was simply out of control, and he was the obvious threat right from the get-go. Congrats to him for his 2 Thassa's wins tonight. We hope you enjoyed watching the production. Feel free to check out the deck links listed below, and we will see you back on the stack.